morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh, and I'm here to welcome the one and only John Filito. John is the current president of the Department of Agriculture. He is here to talk about a major problem in our world, meat consumption. So give him your upright attention and respect. Without further ado, I welcome John Filito.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm here to discuss a possible remedy to the world's food crisis and global warming. We all know that there are entire nations of people across the globe that are starving and suffer from malnutrition. With the population growing, more and more people are starving, suffering, and dying from a lack of food. This chart above is showing the difference between countries and how many people are starving in these nations. Clearly, there are more people going hungry in developing countries than in already developed ones. While the food crisis is urgent for the sake of our people, so too is global warming for the sake of our planet. The average temperature across the globe has become increasingly hotter in the past few decades. This change is most likely caused by the increase in greenhouse gas emissions and carbon dioxide expelled into the atmosphere by humans. Now, looking at this chart, it is evident that livestock contribute to a much more significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions than thought by most. Now, I'd like to point out one of the greatest contributors to this problem, although it is often overlooked. Meat processing is one of the greatest industries in the world, as almost everyone in developed countries' diet consists of meat and meat products. Meat processing plants both emit large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and waste incredibly high amounts of water through these daily processes. This graph is showing that raising animals for meat take up more space than farming for fruit, potatoes, and vegetables. Meat production takes up over 70% of the world's agricultural land. As you can see in this graph, meat production is on the rise and will continue to rise if we don't take action now. A typical pig factory generates the same amount of waste compared to a city of roughly 12,000 people. A pound of meat takes up 2,500 gallons of water compared to 25 gallons for a pound of wheat. Not only does raising animals use up water, it also contaminates it. Operations such as CAFOs produce huge amounts of animal waste which get into the water supply and affect the aquatic life cycle. Livestock waste is also rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and other fertilizers which eventually work their way into our rivers, streams, and underground water systems, which contaminate our daily water needs. As you can see in the image above, it takes more water to produce meat than it does to produce grain. By reducing meat production and consumption, we can do a lot more than help feed people. It can reduce water use, and that is another big problem to address in the future. So what do we do? It's unrealistic to make farmers and agricultural practices around the world completely shut down their meat production. But if we can raise prices on things, such as water, that is essential to producing meat, then reducing the amount of meat we eat will become reality. In most countries, farmers are allowed to use unlimited water for a flat charge, so they're not being charged by how much they use. And households use a third less water when they're being charged for the actual amount they use. So we need to start charging water at a level which both encourages efficient use and properly reflects its cost, including all costs of purifying and transporting the water, and also environmental and resource costs should be implemented in the water cost total. So by raising water prices and making farmers pay for the actual amount of water they use to produce meat, will significantly lower meat production because they won't want to pay all this money for other things they can produce, such as wheat and corn, which requires much less water than meat does. In addition to raising water prices, another solution would be to lower the global per capita meat consumption. In order to do this, we must include the environmental effects in the meat price and either get rid of or reformulate farm subsidies, which will make meat become more expensive. And when this price goes up, the demand will go down, causing less people in the world to buy it. This is crucial for less developed countries because it will lead them in a direction to not become a waste-producing country for meat and realize they can live off a vegetarian-based diet. Minimization of meat consumption worldwide essentially eliminates all of the energy and resource-wasting processes that comes with processing and packaging meat. It is well known that meat consumption and production is one of the world's largest energy consumers, as the U.S. Food and Agriculture Organization states. The livestock sector is a major stressor on many ecosystems and on the planet as a whole. Globally, it is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases and one of the leading causal factors in loss of biodiversity. While in developed and emerging countries, it is perhaps the leading source of water pollution. If the majority of the planet were to switch to a vegetarian diet, we would be able to dramatically decrease greenhouse gas emissions and water pollution worldwide. The elimination or drastic reduction of all meat producing processes could be the world's most viable option to averting the climate change crisis that has been so heavily discussed in recent years, specifically by shrinking greenhouse gas emissions and water pollution. In addition to saving resources, turning vegetarian will also save the planet significant amounts of space. Currently, growing feed for livestock, which is used for meat production, uses over 70% of all the world's agricultural land. Eliminating the need for feed would free up space for other growth of other crops that some areas are in need of. Many nations are deprived of the fruits and vegetables that they need for proper nutrition, sometimes due to a lack of space for growth of these crops. The land recovered from where livestock feed was grown could certainly be used to farm other crops that wouldn't have been grown previously. This new opportunity for growth would be an extremely viable solution to the world's hunger problem, as it fixes one of the two issues, lack of space and a lack of capital. The benefits of a global shift to vegetarian also apply directly to the health of humans. Vegetarian foods are the major source of nutrition in people's diets. Without vegetables, it wouldn't be possible for humans to have a proper diet and to acquire proper nutrition. In addition, those who currently live on a vegetarian diet have lower rates of heart disease and certain forms of cancer than those who consume meat. Brown University states that a proper vegetarian diet can reduce someone's susceptibility to heart disease, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and breast cancers compared to someone who eats a diet containing meat. A global switch to vegetarian, if done properly, would be one of the greatest health revolutions in history and significantly reduce the obesity epidemic in nations like the United States and Britain. Not only will the exclusion of meat benefit the planet by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and water pollution, it will benefit the health of man. To conclude, the upside of a global switch to a meat-free diet is far greater than its downside. Meat production is one of the world's greatest energy consumers and water polluters, and the feed required to sustain these animals accounts for over 70% of all agricultural land. Switching to vegetarian will go both a long way in averting the climate change crisis we are facing, as well as improving the health of man worldwide by improved nutrition. Thank you for having me on, and go vegetarian.